I think that was the biggest wake up call for me when I got off the plane and stepped into training. It was like, this is why it's the best league in the world, because everybody on your team is really good.
Welcome to our new series, Captain America. I'm Jay DeMerit, and I'll be chatting with some former and present Premier League professionals about their journeys and stories.
Zoom is the way we roll these days, and I want to introduce to all the Watford faithful, my roommate at the World Cup, one of my favorite people of all time, my friend and colleague, Stu Holden of the U.S. national team, now with Fox Sports here in America. How you doing, Stu?
Up the Hornets. I mean, that's what I used to have to hear you say every time we roomed together. It was like, it's nonstop Watford, man. So it's nice to finally be a part of the Watford family here.
I love it. I love it. Well, you got the best backdrop I've ever seen on Zoom. So we'll give you that credit right off the hop. But, you know, as someone that has spent a lot of time in the UK, you know, Stu played at Bolton. He was in the UK for quite some time. And I think it is quite a different talking point, you know, for Americans that have played abroad. There's only, I think I read a stat this year that there's only been 49 Americans that have played in the UK. And if you look at the history of the game over there, I find that really interesting. And I always love talking to my friends that have played in the UK because of A, the culture, and B, just the community around it, you know, the history of the game, the culture that comes with that history. And let's talk about first that, you know, as someone that is from Scotland originally, you know, can you talk a little bit about, you know, kind of what brought you to the UK in the first place? Yeah,
you know, having been born in Scotland, spent most of my life with soccer, football. All my Scottish friends are mortified when I call it soccer, but I'm an American now. You know, when I moved to the US at 10 years old, I still had already developed that passion, that love for the game. The game had grown with me. I happened to be half decent at it. And as my career started to progress here in the US and was on youth national teams, and then eventually went and started playing with Major League Soccer, it was always a goal of mine, like in the back of my head, that I wanted to get back to the UK and I wanted to play there. Why? Because simply put, the Premier League's the best league in the world. It was then, it is now. I don't see any league in the near future surpassing that. And so I played down my contract every single year. I was offered a new contract in Houston and I turned that down because it made it easier for me then to have the opportunity to go and play in the UK. And actually, Jay, like you saying that 49 people, that seems very low to me. Like I thought it was higher because we have a lot of Americans that play in Europe right now, but in Germany and Spain and Italy, but still there's few that play in England. Right now it's Blissett and it's Zach Steffen in the Premier League. I mean, you have Tim Ream playing for Fulham, had been a part of the Premier League as well. And you know, I think that puts it into perspective how difficult that actually is, and how many people dream of doing that, but then get there. And that for me was a big career step, and for me to get back, like I achieved the goal, but then when I got there, it was almost like I know you and I have talked about this a lot of, you don't want to just be there and make up the numbers and say, hey, I'm on a Premier League team. Like you want to actually play and contribute. And so I think that was the biggest wake up call for me when I got off the plane and stepped into training. It was like, this is why it's the best league in the world, because everybody on your team is really good.
Yeah, and you know, and again, you know, obviously my story is almost, you know, the opposite, where I had to play in the 12th division and really understand the culture first before I even knew what that, you know, top division would feel like. And you know, for you won a championship in Houston, all of those kind of, you know, abilities to show the UK that you had all this talent. And so talk a little bit about when you land, you know, as a young American, or American, I'll put those in quotations, you know, as you moved into the game, what were the first things you noticed about the UK, the culture of the game, the locker room, those types of things as you got into those locker rooms?
I think that you could tangibly feel the pressure, and like Houston and playing in MLS was a different kind of pressure. We had pressure to win championships because we were widely considered the best team. And I would say then when I got to the UK, it was, but you know, like we were in Houston, we were kind of the new team, and it was fun and it was exciting. And the game is still growing here and trying, you know, everybody's trying to constantly lift each other up. And the soccer community in itself, it's like, how can we tell the good stories? How can we, you know, continue to grow this sport and put it in one of the top 4 in the US? In the UK, it's like, hey, this is the biggest sport. This means everything to the fans, to the community, to the culture here. You turn on the TV and it was soccer. And like I tangibly felt that pressure and knew that if I went out to dinner and I had a bad game, like you hear this reference often, but I would like feel it from Bolton fans, and there would be kind of off-color remarks, and it might have been banter, but you know, that banter that's like banter, but it's not really banter. It's just a nice way of saying it. Like, hey, you were pretty yesterday, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, actually I was. And now I feel even worse because I'm eating my spaghetti bolognese here or my Sunday roast, and you tell me how awful I am. And then also I think, you know, being there, you recognize and realize the history and how important that is to people, and where you have to respect that and what it means to wear the shirt and understanding that. And it means being a big part of the community as well. And I think you and I, and I know you have because you're still involved with the we tried to connect with fans, and we've kept in touch with the club. I still follow the club, Bolton, every single week. Unfortunately, we're in the lower leagues right now, but we're working our way back up the English soccer pyramid. And I don't know, I came away from that feeling like this is a family club, and I'm a part of the family forever. But I would say that I noticeably felt like I became a better player almost overnight, because I'm competing with full internationals from every different country. And it was Kevin Davis and Johan Elmander, and we had Daniel Sturridge, Jack Wilshere. Like I could list off 50 names of guys that were just top level. And I felt coming after that year, that was the best soccer I'd ever played in my life, because I was being challenged every single day and I had to meet that in order to play.
Totally. And I agree too. That pressure piece I think is really interesting, because, you know, you do feel that pressure on a much bigger scale. Obviously when you start to play and your accountability becomes something that's so much more, because of that culture piece, because of that, you know, the grandma that's in the stands that's been there for 86 years in a row means something. You know, you got to prove it to those people, especially when you're not from that country. You know, you always look at the extortionate transfer fees that English players in England, you know, can produce. And I think as Americans, when we came over, it's almost like we had more pressure, because we're not supposed to be there, you know, in my opinion. You know, I remember when I first got here, and maybe you did the same thing, where people are like, well, you're American, but why? So what are you doing here? you know what I mean? Like, Americans can play. And so in a way, it was almost like from the hop was like, how can I prove not only to myself that I belong here, but to the fans? Because the fans know, because they've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of players come through those doors for many years. And in a way, I liked that pressure, but it was certainly my biggest adjustment that I had to figure out.
You know, the other thing that you would have loved, Jay, is that there's a very big appreciation in the UK for like a tackle. And I always joke about this, in that like the way that British fans cheer versus Spanish fans versus German versus American. Like we actually really like a yellow card here in America. Like if you get a yellow card, fans are on their feet and they're chanting. They're like, yeah, that guy got a yellow. I never forget my first tackle from Bolton. I tracked a guy down, 30-yard run down the sideline, made a sliding tackle, put the ball and the guy into the into the sideboards, and like the fans are on their feet, jumping up, cheering, and like there's a very big appreciation, also because of the soccer IQ and the knowledge that they have there, the fans, but also for like the little details and the little parts of the game, and not just the goals and the assists. And I know you, for example, I could just feel your eyes just lighting up of a guy like you're about to smash him, and then, you know, giving it a big one to the fans and them cheering back at you. So I love it.
That's right. And I only got sent off once, and that's my big thing. I never got suspended for yellow. I'm
gonna have to check the record books on that one.
Yeah, never, not one suspension my whole career in 10 years. And I was one of those guys that loved tackling guys and put them in the stand. So again, there is an art form. I agree that the English really appreciate that. So, you know, as you moved into your career, I remember reading I can't remember what, I think I don't know, it might have been the Times, that at one point of the season, Stu Holden was the best player in the Premier League based on all the stats, from completed passes to fitness levels to all this stuff. Talk a little bit about that as you became a main player in the Bolton organization. You know, I think for Americans, same with me, as I became a captain of a team like Watford. Talk a little bit what that was. I loved that. You know, when we weren't supposed to be there, but then we got there, earned our stripes, and then became leaders of those clubs. Like, what was your favorite part about being a leader in those English locker rooms?
Yeah, I think for me, I recognized pretty early that, and I'm a big personality like you, Jay, and sometimes I tend to come in a little bigger than, you know, maybe I should right at the beginning. And I kind of, I remember it was like second week of training or something. I jumped in on the jokes and was given a little bit of this and that, and maybe made a bit of a banter towards a teammate. It was Andy O'Brien. You know Andy O'Brien well.
Oh yeah.
And I got snapped back at and was like, he almost gave it the "Who are you?" And I recognized in that moment, like, people will welcome you, but at the end of the day, this is still people fighting for jobs and competing for jobs, and B, you have to earn that respect. You almost had to earn that through your play. And if they saw that on the field, they saw the way you trained, they saw the way you played, your status in the locker room grew. And so I would say, coming off the back of the World Cup in 2010, which you and I were both at, I came in fit, I came in hungry, I was ready to just go. And I had probably the best 6-8 months of my career. I was flying, and I think it was voted one of the best players, or if not, I think it was number one player based on, as you said, like stats and tackles, interceptions and all that. And that was a huge, recognition for me, but it wasn't like, I never settled on that. And unfortunately, the end part of that year, I picked up the main injury, that I was all kind of downhill from there. And, but that was like such a, I don't know, that I felt that from my teammates, just through their trust and guys coming up to me after games or at halftime and talking. And also I had the backing and the confidence of my coach that I owe a lot to. Owen Coyle, from like minute one, told me, like, this is your role. This is what we want from you. Here's your expectations, execute, and the spot's yours. And I really took to that. And the team was full of confidence. We were flying, we were competing near the top. We were actually 5th in the Premier League come April. So only, I think 2 months left of the season. And yeah, it's times I look back on and wish they never ended, to be completely honest. I know that all does end and at a point, but those are like some of the best moments and memories of my entire life.
Favorite moment in a Bolton shirt?
Not even a quiz. It was the Derby winner against Blackburn, 89th minute. We were up 1-0. They scored in the 88th minute. We were down a man, and it felt like, oh man, we've blown this game here. It was a 6-pointer. Blackburn were near the bottom of the table. And straight off the kickoff, passed it back. Sam Ricketts passed it straight up the field, hit a long diagonal. I just sprinted up the field and knew that Kevin Davis is an absolute animal in the air, and he just knocked it down to me, took a little chest off the volley. Left foot, bottom corner, Paul Robinson flapping like a fish at it, and it's in the back of the net. Scenes, blackout, really cool, actually. And speaking of connection with fans, and I don't know if you've received something like this from Watford fans, but a guy printed out a diagram for me of like the moment of the goal with like lines and dotted lines for long pass and the shot, and it's on a field, and it's framed with a picture of me celebrating with the fans. And it's hung on my wall, actually. So, it's really cool memento and moment and memory for me that, again, is not just top soccer memory, but maybe like top 5 moment in my life for sure.
Oh, I hear you. I got a couple of those too in a Watford shirt, where it's, again, that's what I love about the culture of it. It's like, it is something that's bigger than us, and I think England is one of those rare places in the world where you maybe not the rare, but it's, you certainly feel it. And I think, that was one of my favorite parts of playing in England. And, talk a little bit about your favorite parts. What made England so special to you?
England was a culture in the UK that I had a history with, having been born in Scotland and living there for 10 years. So a lot of people have asked me, like, what was it like adjusting back to UK culture? And I said, I loved it. Like, I love the US. I love where I live. I live in Los Angeles. It's 70 degrees and sunny every day. But I think what I loved so much about the UK was the people. Like, I love the humor and the sarcastic wit and banter, and like the constant feeling that you need to be on your toes, and the camaraderie. I've got some really great friends from over there. Again, I love the fact that football was and is the number one sport, and it's on TV at all times. You're watching match of the day. It's like religion. And it was quite acceptable to do what we did. Play a game on a Saturday, Sunday, I would sit in front of the telly, I'd go get a Sunday roast and watch like all 3 games, watch the Spanish league at night, and then watch the American league and NFL at like 2 a.m, and
with a Guinness, of course.
Yeah, with Guinness. I loved the proximity to other countries in Europe, the public transportation. I used to love taking the train down to London, and London is such a great city. with so many great restaurants and pubs and people. I think it's just people, man. Like, people have connected our lives, right, Jay? Like through football and through our relationships that we've built with people throughout that. I haven't said one thing about the weather, because Brits, your weather's not that great. You know, there's a lot of rain up in Manchester, but I got used to it. I grew to love it and enjoy it. It is the best weather and climate for soccer out there, because the field is wet and the ball's zipping around. So I'm actually hoping to get back over there at Christmas and New Year with, I want to take my daughter to a Premier League game and just have her experience what that's about, right? And because it truly is such a unique and special place. And boy, are Brits just proud of their football, man. It's like, don't ever tell a Brit or try to tell a Brit about football, because they know best.
100%. Well, I mean, that's the fun part for me now, like engaging with a lot of these North American fans. You know, I just did the Fan Fest in LA, where I saw you a few weeks ago, and you know, the amount of English people that are on American soil that love their clubs and still follow them. And again, to their point, wake up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, 6 a.m to watch their teams. Again, it says everything. And you know, let's talk a little bit about the Watford team. You know, again, a lot's been said about this group. We know that, you know, there's been a lot of, you know, there's been coaching changes, there's been player personnel changes over the years, and in a way that's been a positive thing, and in a way that has been a negative thing. What's your take on the Watford team as someone who you know, continues to watch soccer on a daily basis and is in the mix and of the soccer culture? We'll talk a little bit about what the Watford team is to you this year. What do you think, you know, the hirings have been, their recent form? Talk a little bit about what you know about Watford and how you think they'll fare this year for the rest of the season.
Yeah, one thing I've learned about Watford in recent history is that they're not afraid to make a change at the club. As far as, like, if it's not going well and they don't feel it's going well, boom, next manager, up you go. And there's a lot of talented players in that squad. And actually, one guy I followed his entire career since I met him through you, Jay, was Tom Cleverley. And I still look at the team sheet and I'm like, he's still playing. Like, Cleves is still going.
Man of the match in the 4-1
yeah,
win.
Man of the match was against his former club, Man United. I played against him at United after he had been at Watford with you and was it Super Danny Graham back in the day?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so like I think it's a nice balance of a squad. I know it's a tough slog sometimes if you start the season poorly and then you change the coach, that you're kind of in that relegation type battle, and you know, matches against the Man United one feels like a really big one. The big win against Everton, and then you get the big win against United at home. Kind of, well, it saw Ole Gunnar out the door, but it also, you know, just allowed Watford, I think, to regain some momentum. So even with experienced guys like Moussa Sissoko now in the middle of the park, and an absolute beast and box-to-box midfielder, king up front. And then another guy that I follow his career is Cucho Hernández, who had been on loan with us. I'm a part owner now of Real Mallorca in Spain, and we had Cucho 2 years ago for us up front, and he was awesome. Like, I loved watching him play. I know he had been owned by Watford and loaned out and had a couple loans in and around La Liga, but we'd hope to get him back. He was so good. He's so dynamic on the ball, and it's good to see him getting some game time and also scoring some goals and assisting for the club this year. So I'm a big fan of his and hope his continued success, and I hope Watford can keep picking up 3 points and stay in the Premier League this year.
100%. I like this Ranieri move. I think he just brings almost like a grandfather feel to a locker room. I think there's a positivity that breeds out of him. And I think, to your point, they've really added a lot of this scoring punch. Everyone knows you cannot stay in the league with just good defense. You got to score. There's no way you're going to pick up points if you don't have somebody putting the ball in the net. And I think that was really what they've bet on. And now to have, like, you know, Dennis is back fit now, the Nigerian who's incredible. You know, Ismaïla Sarr has been their best player over the last couple of seasons. I'm so glad that they've been able to keep him. And then adding someone like Cucho, who's bringing a little bit more like bull strength and slashiness added to those two. I think we're looking pretty good as to how we can put the ball in the net on the front side and stay in the league. So I totally agree with you there. And the last question, you know, as Americans, as people that you know, again, dreamed of one day coming to England and making it happen. You know, there's so many players out there in America that want to come to the UK. What's the best advice you can give to young Americans, 17, 18, 19-year-olds working on trying to be professionals? What's the best advice you can give to see how they could get to one day play in the Premier League?
I think the biggest focus is, and I feel that something so important, and it's mentality and also focusing on your own development and not, looking so far ahead. I think it's good to set attainable goals and even goals that might not be attainable, because it gives you something to work towards and dream about. But I think that we found, and you're talking to no better people and you and I right now, and guys that grafted, grinded, found a way, found what worked for us, found what was effective, never took no for an answer. And so, you can have all the skill and talent that you want. And I think I'm pretty comfortable in saying that I wasn't the most talented player in my region at my age group growing up, but I wanted it more. And I continued to work at my craft. You and I both have stories of playing a 5-yard ball against the wall, right? And practicing your touch and going out, staying late, staying in the gym. And I tried to tell all these young players that, time is something you can't get back. And I unfortunately had to retire at 29, 30 years old from an injury. And I always used to tell people that even before. And then after the fact, looking back and saying, man, I was in the best moment in my life, in my career. And it was boom, over in an instant, and that was it. And I wasn't even prepared. I don't think you can prepare for that. But how do you take advantage of the downtime? And what are you doing to make yourself better on the field? What are you doing off the field as far as your habits and making yourself, putting yourself and giving yourself the best opportunity to be at that level? And if you want to be at the best, there's a reason why those guys are there, and because they're doing all those things right. And even if they're more talented, they're going to work harder than you are. And I try to tell young players that all the time. And I know they probably hear that thousands of times, but really seeing it and having seen people have success by doing that, it's something that I think you can look them in the eyes and say, look, you want to be there? Here's what you got to do. And there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts to the top. You got to put in the work.
100%. And I think being creative, to your point earlier about how do you come to a club like that? And again, I talk about this all the time. Like, if I would have came into Watford and acted like a brash American that, deserved to be there, I probably wouldn't have stayed, because they would have shut me out the door right away. And I think respecting the environment is hugely important. I think making the most of opportunities. As you know, how many opportunities did you get to actually be in that window where someone like Bolton would watch? Or when you come to Bolton and you have only a certain trial game to play for, or, you get your first start, what happens then? You hit the bed and all of a sudden it's something else. And so I think that's the other side of it is yes, you got to graft to get that opportunity. But what happens when that opportunity happens? Are you ready for it? Have you prepared for it properly? Are you fit? Are you ready? Have you noticed what team you're playing against? Have you done the research to understand, who you're playing against and how you can get the most out of that moment? And I think that's the other side of that, is like, once you get that once in a lifetime moment, what do you do with it? And I think, both of us were able to maximize that opportunity and to do well in those games where all of a sudden a contract came next. And I think that for me was the biggest difference of how other people I saw in my situation that came over and didn't make it. And it was just, I took the opportunities when they were there because I was ready for them. I was prepared for them, and I made the most of them. Where
opportunity meets preparation, man. Success.
100%. And, and again, thanks to, that was it. That's the only questions I got today, but, we could chat about this for hours, but
you came with the easy ones today, but the softballs,
Yeah. Well, it's all part of the growth of the game. It.
Up the Hornets.